a psychiatrist at Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, New Delhi. His core area of interest is sexual medicine, gender and transgender mental health, AI and psychiatry, social psychiatry. So broad areas of interest. He has several publications to his credit, and he is an active member of Global Psychiatric Association. Along with him, there is another person who is Dr. Gaurav Uppal, who is a gold medal winner in the postgraduate psychiatry examination from Manipal University. He is a consultant psychiatrist. He will also be the second speaker of the symposium. And the third speaker of the symposium is Dr. Anusha Garg. I believe Dr. Anusha Garg is also available here. So Dr. Bipul Janardan will be basically moderating the session, and he will be the speaker and he's coordinating this session. Over to you, Dr. Bipul, for the presentation. Maybe we can finish the presentation in 30 to 35 minutes by all the three speakers, then we can take a question answer.
I think because of some reason, Dr. Anusha cannot be, she cannot present here. So we will be speaking.
Yeah, you can finish the presentation in 30 minutes, 15 minutes for each of the speaker.
Yeah, we'll try to do it as fast as we can. And so this is my our presentation, War and Mental Health. I'm presenting along with Dr. Gaurav Uppal. So when we think of war, most of us pictures ruined building collapse, infrastructure, or injured body. But what often goes unseen are the psychological wounds that can last for longer than the physical scars. War affects not only soldiers on the frontiers, but also the civilian, children, and those forced to flee from their homes. And yet, mental health is often overlooked as a part of the emergency responses. Researchers show that long after fighting, ants communities continue to struggle with depression, PTSD, and the other psychiatric disorders. In fact, Steele and colleagues highlighted in the landmark JAMA paper, post-conflict trauma leaves a profound long-term impact. So when we talk about war and conflict, it is easy to focus on politics, borders, but the real impact is felt by the civilians. Imagine losing not just your home, but your family and the sense of safety overnight. That's the reality of millions. Constant exposure for violence, to torture, or even starvation leaves invisible wounds, increase the risk of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and the overwhelming grief. And it's not just numbers. Behind every statistics is a child robbed by childhood, a woman facing heightened by vulnerability, and the family shattered. These are not short-term crises, they are trauma that echo for the generation. That is why mental health support for civilian in conflict isn't optional, it's essential. So when soldier returns from a battlefield, the war doesn't end for them. It simply shifts inside. Many face combat, stress reaction, moral injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder. But the tragedy is that the stigma often keeps them from seeking help, as if admitting distress somehow diminishes their services. Studies like Hodge and colleagues in the New England Journal of Medicine show how common these struggles are, yet how rarely soldiers reach out. Suicide rates are often climbs after the deployment, reflection just how deep the invisible wounds can be. Yet, yet even when they come home, reintegration into society is not easy thing. Many ways the battle after war can be just as tough as the one in the frontiers. When we think of war, most of us picture most of ruined buildings, most of things ruined building, collapse infrastructure, or injured body. When the refugees carry with them not just a suitcase, but layer of trauma. Many have witnessed violence, lost family, and the endures harrowing journeys into the survivor. Yet when they finally reach refugee camp, safety, and the psychiatric care often missing. Studies like Physils and colleagues, the Lancet reveals shockingly high rate of depression, even in the psychosis among displaced population. Beyond the clinical picture, like something deeper, the pain of the cultural loss and the identity crisis, where people feel cut off from their roots and the community. In other words, the refugee crisis is not about the border or shelter. It's about broken identity and fragile minds. And the depression at the time they need support. Similarly, children in the conflict zone, imagine being just 10 or 12-year-old and instead of sitting in classroom, you are handed a weapon. This is the tragic reality of the thousand children recruited as a soldier in conflict zones around the world. Their childhood is stolen, school disrupted, and the innocence shattered by the violence. Many suffer developmental trauma, not just when they have seen, but from they have been forced to do. They often return home with the deep psychological scars, nightmares. They won't let them sleep, sudden outburst, emotional numbness, and the hunting inability to connect with others. These are not just temporary issues left undressed. They can evolve into serious long-term condition, conduct disorder, depression, and the PTSD. As the Betancourt and colleagues powerfully noted in Java, these children are not just victims of wars; they are survivors, profound emotional injury, and they deserve them our sympathy, empathy. They need structured psychosocial support, educational reintegration, and above all, hope. So, in many war-torn regions, rape is not just an act of violence, it is a weapon of war. It is used strategically to terrorize community, assert control, and dismantle the social fabric. But the trauma does not even end with the assault. Survivor, often women and girls, face deep social stigma, forced silence, and isolation. Many are blamed instead of supported psychologically. The damage is profound. PTSD, chronic somatic form, stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and there's tragically an increased risk of suicide. Worse still, these atrocities are vast underreported. The shame of fear, lack of accessibility care leave most survivors unheard and untreated. As King et al. Emphasized in the American Journal of Public Health, gender-based violence during war is not only human right violation, it is a public health emergency that continues long after the conflict end. These women don't just rescue; they need long-term trauma informed care, and the global shift in how we respond. So coming on to the most important aspect is neurobiological effect. So when we think of war, we often focus on the visible wound, but most of most of the devastating injury are invisible, as deep into the brain. War trauma directly impact the brain's stress response system, is especially the limbic system, HP axis, the very circuit that regulate emotion, memory, and fear. Even more striking, recent evidence suggests that trauma can trigger epigenetic changes, potentially passing the psychological effect across the generation. This is not just psychological, it's biological. Trauma leaves a fingerprint on the brain itself, reinforcing the urgent need for trauma-informed care, especially in post-conflict mental health programs. When the wounds of the war go beyond the physical, healing must begin from within, and that begins with the trauma informed psychiatric care. Evidence based therapies like CBT, EMDR, and RTMS are showing real promises in treating PTSD, trauma related disorders. Group therapy that can also play a key role, especially for the survivor who feel isolated in their pain. We must go beyond just symptoms. Psychological rehabilitation, resilience building, and the restoring dignity and agency are essential step in the long road to recovery. As emphasized in WHO guidelines, healing from war is not just about survival; it is about restoration, reintegration, and the reclaiming one's future. When the war ends, the rebuilding begins, but the mental health is often left behind. In fact, less than 2% of the global health funding is allocated to mental health, even in the more devastated conflict zones. This must change. Mental health care is not luxury, it's a lifetime. It should be central to the every humanitarian response plan, not often an afterthought. We need to integrate psychiatry into post conflict rebuilding from the field of hospital to refugee camps and ensure that the cultural sensitive trauma-informed care is accessible to all. But this only happens through strong, sustained advocacy. We need to raise our voice across government, NGOs, and the global health program to say mental health, not just in peacetime, but especially when the world is at war. True healing starts when we prioritize the invisible wound just as the visible one. In India, the scars of the conflict are not confined to border. They are right here, from Kashmir to Manipur. Amidst the refugee influx, thousands face ongoing trauma every day. Yet the reality is stark. Underreporting is rampant, and the mental health infrastructure remain stressed, particularly in conflict-affected regions. When it is needed, it's not just more service, but better ones. Service that actually cultural rooted, community informed, and trauma sensitive. Recovery is not cannot be copy pasted from the West. It must the language of the local pain and the local resilience. But lies the opportunity in itself. So in the last war, I just want to say war does not end war. And when the bullet is fired, it's a psychological aftershocks, lingers for the generation. Survivor carry invisible scars, trauma, grief, or loss of identity that demand urgent, sustained mental health support. Psychiatry is not is luxury in the post-conflict zone. It is a core pillar rebuilding lives and society. We must prioritize trauma-informed, culture-sensitive care, especially in low resource and conflict-affected zone. Thank you so much. Over to Dr. Gaurav Uppal.
Dr. Bipul, you can unshare your screen so that Dr. Bipul can start sharing his screen.
Okay.
Good evening all, and thank you so much for giving me a chance to present here. I'm just share my presentation.